Hi everyone, welcome. We are Save Research and today we're going to be doing a consent and boundaries workshop. So we were founded in October 2019 by myself and Marissa, who is here with me. Our mission is to provide a community for those affected by sexual assault through an accurate research, education, and resources. You can use this consent and boundaries workshop in your workplace, at school, with a group of friends, or at home with your family, and practice these examples together and really have these discussions about what is consent.
Okay, so we're gonna start talking about consent. Okay, so consent is, so take this moment to pause the video and discuss what consent is to you. Laura, what's consent to you?
Consent is affirmative. It's something that someone wants to do. You can revoke it and take it away at any time. It's a yes, it's not a maybe, and you're sure that you want to do it. What about you, Marissa?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think that it's just definitely like ongoing and just definitely positive body language, positive language in general. And yeah, so if you go to the next little slide, here's a video that we already have on our YouTube channel. So take this moment to pause this video and go find this other video on our channel. We'll link it also in the comments. And it's a short video just describing what we think consent is.
And as you can see, kind of just in this little part, it says consent is revocable, communication, positive physical cues, and an affirmative statement. So this video will give you some examples of that and just a little quick recap before we go into some of those gray area examples. All right, so we're gonna get started with our first example and the time where you guys get to start discussing together about what consent is to you. So Charlie and Finley have been dating for a few weeks. Charlie asked to kiss Finley last week and they agreed. Tonight at dinner, Charlie kissed Finley again and Finley kissed them back. So this is the part where we want you guys to discuss, and Marissa and I will tell you what we think as well. So we're going to go through each of the questions and then I want you to pause after each one and start having these conversations. So first, was there consent from Finley? Pause here and discuss. Okay, Marissa, do you think there was consent from Finley?
Um, in this specific situation, I don't really think there was. They didn't have this conversation tonight at this dinner that they're having. So I definitely think that even though a few weeks ago or last week they agreed, I think that this should be an ongoing conversation, just especially since they've only been dating for a few weeks and this isn't something that's like a commonplace occurrence yet in their relationship.
Yeah, very good. Consent is ongoing, just like what Marissa said. So it's always an ongoing conversation. So just because someone consented at one point doesn't mean they're going to consent in at a different point. So would your view be different on the situation if Charlie and Finley had been together for a few months or a few years? Take a moment to pause, have these discussions, and when you're ready, come back. Okay, Marissa, so would your view be different if they had been dating for a while?
Um, I think probably for like longer, definitely in a few years, because I feel like at that point, um, just like kissing your partner may be a little bit more of a commonplace thing that you're doing, but it definitely does not hurt to continue to have these conversations. And even at that point in a relationship, if you still want to ask, that is 100% fine. And I think it's probably the best practice. But if it's something that you've established with whoever you're in a relationship with at that point, that this is like during dinner, just like something you do and you've already had that conversation. And then I think that it's more of a okay thing, but it's still always good just to keep up and keep the conversation flowing.
Yeah, I completely agree with Marissa. I personally am in a long-term relationship and it's kind of looking at those cues every morning. So if they don't have the positive cues, you're not going to go and lean in and give them a kiss. You're going to kind of check in with them and then give them a kiss after they say they're okay with it. All right, on to Marissa, next scenario.
Okay, so this scenario, Lennon has been out drinking. Riley texts Lennon and asks if they want to come over. Lennon agrees. When Lennon arrives, Riley asks Lennon if they want to have sex, to which Lennon says yes. So here we have some more discussion questions for you. So the first question is, was there consent? So take a moment to pause. Okay, Laura, was there consent in this situation?
Yeah, well, actually, it does depend. So Lennon said yes, but Lennon has been drinking. So kind of our rule, if someone has been drinking, is if they cannot drive, then they should not be having sex. If you have been drinking for a long time, it's not an appropriate time to give consent. You can wait till someone kind of sobers up, give them food, drink some water with them, and wait till they can give that clear, completely their affirmative consent.
Great, yeah. So we've kind of gone into like the second question here already, which was, did the fact that Lennon had consumed alcohol impact whether there was consent? So you could still take a chance to pause this video if you want to and kind of discuss with what Laura said and if you agree with that, and just kind of have a conversation with that. And then we'll go into the next question. Okay, so then the final question for the scenario is, would the situation be different if Riley had also been drinking? So take a moment, have a discussion about this. Okay, Laura, what do you think?
Okay, so if Riley had also been drinking, then I would really say that there really couldn't be consent either way, because now even the person asking is slightly intoxicated or they've been drinking, which means that they're not really in the right place to even be having these types of relationships. They might kind of wake up in the morning and both regret it. And it's not worth it, guys. We want that affirmative consent. We want to get it. Also, it's just such a better relationship when you have that. And I know some of you might have different opinions. And remember, there's not always a right or wrong answer in these gray area scenarios. But for me, I would say no, there is no consent if they had both been drinking and they both need to go get some food, get some water, and sober up before they can be good consenting adults.
Great, okay, we're gonna move on to our third and last consent scenario.
All right, Clark and Dakota have been dating for a few months. They slept over at each other's apartment multiple times. After dinner one night, Clark notices that Dakota seems off. Clark then asks Dakota if they want to go home with them. Dakota fidgets and says, I guess. Once home, Clark asks Dakota if they want to have sex. Dakota responds, if you want to. All right. Okay, guys. Was there consent? Pause here and discuss about that. Okay, Marissa, was there consent in this situation?
So in this situation, I'm gonna go with no. That's really because of this like body language that we see here, and also the words I guess. So like this fidgeting kind of like makes me think that Dakota's a little bit uncomfortable here, and also that I guess is not an affirmative statement. And then here at the end, we also see this if you want to language, which does not really, again, like correspond to positive consent or affirming statement. So also sounds like could lead into like a coercive situation if like Dakota were to keep or if Clark were to keep like pressing Dakota in this situation. So yeah, that's what I would say.
And then Marissa, you want to remind everyone what coercion is if they weren't able to watch that video?
Yeah, so coercion is just a situation where you're like pressuring someone to do something that they've already kind of like said no to, or something that you can tell that they're uncomfortable with doing. So it's kind of just like pushing at the situation, and it can come in many different forms. A lot of times in like a power dynamic relationship, you could see that there. So there's a lot of different situations where coercion could come into play. So if you're not too sure on what coercion is, I suggest you do some research just to remind yourself what it is. And yeah, definitely an important topic when it comes to consent.
Yeah, and if you guys want to discuss further, pause and talk about it, especially if you're in a workplace environment. There can be a lot of those workplace power dynamics. So it's really important to talk about coercion and even like pushing on a coworker in a situation where they're really saying no and they're setting their boundaries and it's not within their job description. That's kind of a situation where coercion might apply. So I would really suggest talking about it. So last question with this scenario. What do you think Clark should do next time to show respect for Dakota? So what do you guys think she or they should do? So pause here and discuss it with each other. Okay, Marissa, what do you think Clark should do next time to show respect for Dakota?
So I think Clark should just like definitely stop asking in the situation and also think of maybe a different activity to do, like watching a movie, going and getting food, just something else, kind of to get their mind off of this, as well as respect that Dakota clearly feels uncomfortable in the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Respect the people that you're with. You should just overall respect them. Okay, so I'm going to pass it on to Marissa to talk about, we're going to switch to our topic of boundaries.
Yeah, so let's talk about boundaries. Okay, so take a moment to pause this video and discuss how you want to set boundaries in your life and also tools that you use to set boundaries. So, for me, I think boundaries are important to set with anyone in your life, whether it's at your job, with someone you're in a relationship with, a friend, family, and it just like gives you space to think about you and think about where your limits are and what you're capable of doing and not letting people like push past that. So, Laura, if you want to talk about maybe some tools that you use to set boundaries.
Yeah, so tools that I use to set boundaries. So first, work boundaries. When you're off work, do not answer your work emails. Do not answer work texts, as tempting as it may be. If it's a simple thing, you can't. But it's really important to set those boundaries. If you're not getting, maybe if you're a salary worker, but especially if you're an hourly worker, like set those boundaries. Work when you're at work. Have your life when you're outside of work. It is your responsibility to kind of set those boundaries. And I know it can be really hard, but your boss isn't going to think less of you if you've set those boundaries. And if they do, then you're not in a good work environment. Okay, and then in relationships, it's really just important to keep that open line of communication. So setting boundaries when you need space. A really good thing that you can do is, I know, even if you have anxious partners, sometimes just saying like, okay, I need space. And then if you have an anxious partner, reassuring them that it's not to do with them. It's just you need your you time. You need to set those boundaries and have your own space to do those alone things that you want to do, which are really important to kind of keeping yourself in a good mental state. Boundaries with families, those can be really difficult for a lot of us. So setting those boundaries by just having the conversation, like, okay, if you're going to come over to my home, you can't just barge in and say you live close with your parents or you live close with a relative. They have to still follow those boundaries. But also the other thing is, especially for parent boundaries, that if you're going to set a boundary with your parents, you have to respect them, and the same with those boundaries. And that's how you're going to get people to kind of do those to follow boundaries and to really listen when you're setting those boundaries. All right, so I hope you guys had a really good discussion about boundaries, and this is a really important topic. So if you need more time to discuss, pause again and even continue further with talking about that. And then why are boundaries important? So if you guys have time, I really suggest watching this video. You can watch the whole video. When we did our workshop in the past, we weren't able to show the whole video because of time constraints, but the whole video is super important. Brene Brown is an expert on vulnerability and shame, and she will talk about why it's so important to set those boundaries. And it's even really hard for people like her who work in these topics and understand and study why boundaries are important, because you want to be there, you want to be generous for other people, but boundaries are about being generous for yourself, and she will touch further on that topic. Okay, so now we're going to go into our first scenario, and I'm going to let Marissa take that first scenario away for boundaries.
Okay, so here's scenario one for boundaries. Dallas can't wait for their second date with Ash. Ash seems really into Dallas, but they haven't been answering Dallas's text all day. Dallas doesn't know what to think and sends Ash a request for a video call to find out what's going on. So here we have a number of questions. So our first one is that, do you think Ash's boundaries were respected? So take a moment to pause and discuss. Okay, Laura, what do you think?
No. I do not think they were very much respected. I get like being really nervous. I've been in both sides of the story and I get really being really nervous about that date where it's not going to happen, but texting someone constantly and then calling them even if they haven't been answering, they could be at work, they could be doing so many things. So by doing that, you're not really respecting their space, you're not respecting their time. Just you need to wait. And I know sometimes it sucks, but they just were not respected in this situation.
Okay, and then our second question is, do you think Dallas was justified in how they acted? Take a moment to discuss this. Okay, Laura, do you think Dallas was justified?
I mean, in one way, yes, because maybe they're like super anxious and they just really want to know when the date's happening. But in the other way, they're not respecting Ash's space at all. So they really can't be doing that. So it's not really justified. And texting, calling, one text, justified. Maybe one call, justified. Millions of texts, then calling after no answer to millions of texts. I don't think that's super justified.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, so how might you see the situation differently if you were Ash? So take a moment, think about it. Okay, Laura, how might you see the situation differently?
Okay, so from Ash's side, maybe if they barely know this person, like I would think I would be very afraid if someone that I barely knew was just texting, calling. Also, from Ash's situation, they could have been at work. They might not have been able to really communicate and set those boundaries. And in Dallas's side, he didn't really get that information, but Ash is just they could be at work, they could be doing something else. Maybe their phone died. You don't know. So I would understand like if I got all those text messages, I would kind of freak out. But if I really wanted to go on this date with this person, then I would say, oh, sorry, like I was doing something. But yeah, the situation from their side is a little different than the situation from Dallas's side for sure.
Okay, and then our final question for the scenario is, how would you set more clear boundaries with Dallas if you were Ash? So again, take a moment to think about this, pause the video. Okay, Laura, how would you set more clear boundaries?
Before I went to go do the thing that my phone, I was not able to answer my phone, I would just send a little text like, hey, our date is on. I'll see you then. I will be busy all day. Just something like that. You don't even have to tell the person what you're doing. You can just say, I'm busy all day. I won't be near my phone. Or maybe if your phone's about today, hey, my phone's low on battery. Our date's still on. Or me, if I was really excited about the day, I would go get on my computer and like Facebook message them or something. That's just me. But yeah, just kind of setting those boundaries and letting Dallas know like that either it's still on or it's not on. Ghosting someone can kind of lead to this little response where they're just texting, like calling because you just disappear and that's not really a great thing to do to someone. So yeah.
Okay, great. So we're going to move on to our second boundary scenario now.
Woo-hoo. All right, boundaries scenario 2. While texting, Devin asked their partner Kai if they would send a shirtless selfie. Kai explained that they didn't feel comfortable sending photos like that. Devin said that they understood and the text conversation continued as normal. Later on that evening, Devin asked for a shirtless selfie again, adding that they'd had a long day and a photo from Kai would cheer them up. Kai says they don't want to, but they'll do it if it means that much to Devin. Kai takes and sends the message. So, do you think Kai's boundaries were respected? I'll pause here, talk about it. Okay, Marissa, what do you think? Were the boundaries respected?
No, the boundaries were definitely not respected in this scenario. Kai already said that they did not want to send this photo. So the fact that Devin's asking for the selfie again, especially including this like comment about they'll do it if it means so much to Devin, like it definitely just shows that the boundaries were not respected, and shows that there was a little bit, again, like coercion that came into play here, um, saying that like this would really cheer them up, and that's kind of led Kai to want to send the photo, but really just the boundaries not respected.
Yeah, I agree with Marissa. So next one, how do you think Kai feels reading the second request? So pause here to discuss about that. Emotions are really important when it comes to boundaries. Okay, Marissa, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think Kai feels great reading the second request, especially after declining the first request earlier in the day. And kind of just a puppy is starting to feel like a little bit almost defeated in the situation, getting that message that Devin said it would cheer them up. And, it just definitely wouldn't feel great, and probably feels a little bit pressured just to send the photo now, even though they clearly did not want to.
Yeah, completely agree. Okay, so if Kai had wanted to, how could they have said no to Devin's second request? Take a moment to pause here and discuss about it. Okay, Marissa, what do you think?
I think that they could have just been like, hey, I said earlier I didn't feel comfortable sending this photo. I know it would cheer you up, but I really don't feel comfortable doing it. And um, just like asking them to please respect their boundaries. And I think if it's like their partner and they want to be in a comfortable relationship with the partner, these boundaries should be respected. So I think now continuing with like a conversation between the two about
Mhm.
like the boundaries in their relationship and also what they want from each other, and just like keeping an open line of conversation now would be the best route to take.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree. Open communication, super important. Okay, so last question, what should Devin do next time? So take a moment, pause. I think I know what Devin should do next time. I'm gonna ask Marissa, what do you think Devin should do next time?
I think next time Devin should not ask for this photo twice, even just even if like this extends to a different situation, just in any way, if you're asking someone for something the second time in a day that like they already said they weren't comfortable like doing and explained this, like Devin should definitely just respect the boundaries and not ask again.
Yeah, and it's just like, just wait, like go see it in person. I don't know. That's just my opinion. And okay, we'll move on to the next scenario. If you still need to discuss this further, pause it. This is like a really important conversation to have. Unsolicited photos, really important conversation to have. If you're going to have it right here, this is the time to have it, especially if you're a parent and you're doing this with your kids or your older kids, really important time to have this conversation. Okay, we're going to be moving on to scenario number 3. Marissa, take it away.
Okay, so Adrian and Elliot moved in together after dating for a year, and they now share a computer. While logging into their account on the computer, Elliot notices a minimized one-on-one chat that Adrian was having with someone earlier in the day. Elliot doesn't recognize the name, so they read through the chat log to find out who the person is and how they know Adrian. So for the discussion questions here, we're going to start with, were Adrian's boundaries respected? So take a moment to talk about this. Laura, were Adrian's boundaries respected?
No, they were not. Opening someone's private message is not respecting their boundaries at all. And it's super important to respect those boundaries. Even if you share a computer, Elliot knows that is not their chat. So they have to respect Adrian's space and not just open up the messages. And I know it can be super tempting, guys, but don't do it. Okay. I guess that goes to my question. But yeah.
Yeah. The next question, would you have been tempted to read the chat log? Take a moment, think about it, have an honest conversation about this one. So Laura, you kind of touched on this, but would you have been tempted to read the chat log?
Absolutely. Like what if my partner got me a gift? We don't know who this person is that they're chatting to. I feel like my mind is pure, so it doesn't go to like cheating, but I get some people in anxious relationships might be thinking that, and you want to open that chat, but you have to trust your partner. You have to trust the person you are engaging in a relationship with, whether it's friendship, parents, anything. You have to respect their space. You have to respect their boundaries. Even if you share a device like a computer, like having separate desktops, like that's what my brother and I used to do when we shared a computer, because it's really important that you have your own space, your own individual stuff. Like he would never want me going in his like online like chat groups with his friends, and I would never want him going on, well, at that time on my webkin server and messing up my house. So it's really important to kind of, even if you're tempted, just like, don't do it. Even if you know their passwords, don't do it, because that's kind of breaking that trust. And even if they have nothing to hide, they're not going to trust you for a little bit. And that kind of will ruin the dynamic of the relationship.
Yeah. Okay. So the final question: how could Adrian and Elliot communicate and set boundaries around sharing a computer for the future? So pause the video, discuss this. Okay, Laura, how could they communicate and set these boundaries?
So first, talk about it. If you're okay with your partner like opening any of your messages, then say that. Like I know personally, like if my partner goes on my phone, I'm like, yeah, sure. Like I'm at the point where I'm like, yeah, read my text messages. Like I don't care, or I'll ask them to. So obviously, like each time she's gonna ask, but it's still important like that I like set that boundary and communicated with her. So communicating and being like, yes, like you may go and check it, but without their permission, I would not go and open it. If you just like see the chat, then ask about it, but don't open the chat. Okay. So there's a difference between it popping up and seeing it and opening it and going through and reading all of it. And then also, like I said earlier, kind of in like the temptation thingy, my brother and I, you have nowadays you can have separate logins on one computer. So have those separate logins, have your separate online spaces, and that will make your life a lot easier. Having your own spaces, having your own things in a relationship, regardless of how close you are, is still super important, because you need to keep that individuality. You need to keep your own life. And our computer is where we can communicate, work, do so many different things. So having those own spaces on the computer is a very important boundary to kind of set.
Okay, great. Laura, if you want to wrap up this workshop for us.
Okay. Well, good job, everyone. Your experience is valid. You are heard. We personally promise to work to create a world filled with consent and boundaries. We love you all and we believe in you. If you have never heard of us and you just randomly found this video, then awesome for you. I hope you really enjoyed this consent and boundaries workshop. Please, 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 I will go to the next slide. Go on our website. There are so many resources on there, and we are adding resources as soon as we get the chance for a lot more stuff, for usually like movements, because we're very much against any racism, discrimination that's happening right now. So go look for those resources. There's a lot of counseling resources on there, hotlines if you need it, where you can find them very quickly and very easily. And then you can also follow us on Instagram at Say Research. You're going to just get educated a lot, see some like positive, reassuring things from our amazing marketing team, and just kind of be reminded about consent, be reminded about different things, and be educated daily. So thank you guys so much. Marissa, do you have anything to add?
I think you pretty much summed it up, but just thank you for watching the video, and we look forward to expanding our community and really appreciate your time to watch this video and hope that you found it helpful. So thank you.
Yeah, bye.